Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Bryan Goode, and I'm happy to have you here for another episode of AI in Action. Today, we're here with Tasos Lazarides. He's from California State University at San Marcos. Tasos, great to have you here. I'd love to get to know you a little bit more. Would you mind just telling me a little bit about yourself and the university that you work at?
Of course, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Tasos Lazarides. I work at Cal State San Marcos. I am currently the Director of Digital Transformation in the IT area, but before that, I started as faculty, worked as a staff in student success efforts. Now I'm in IT. Before that, I had more than a decade in education. And now I work on a lot of our AI efforts and our student lifecycle platform efforts and try to support students in every way we can. CSUSM is one of the smallest universities in the Cal State system. We have about 17,000 students, a lot of them first generation. We always strive to make sure that they can be successful, graduate, and go on to their dreams.
Now, I know you started with Dynamics 365 as a student lifecycle platform, and then you've more recently expanded to include Dynamics 365 Contact Center and Copilot Studio. Why do you look at that as the right stack for the transformation that you're trying to drive?
So part of our effort was finding a platform that fits our philosophy, which is holistically supporting students. And when we looked around to see what would work better for the university, we saw that we are already deep in the ecosystem of Microsoft, and Microsoft could help us get where we wanted to go, which is gather all of those ways that students engage with us and then be able to have a holistic single student record. Dynamics initially was where we started because we knew that we needed to have better ways of communicating. But then as you look at all the ways that students engage in 2026, they engage in text, they engage through web chat, they engage through chatbots, they engage through all kinds of ways. We knew that having Dynamics 365 Contact Center on top of our Dynamics ecosystem would allow us to be able to capture all of those many engagement points.
That makes a lot of sense. So Dynamics 365 in some ways is the glue across these departments, across your organization for the students. Is that right?
Absolutely. So when we talk about the student life cycle and supporting the student across the whole student life cycle, from the first point of contact to graduation and beyond, to build that life cycle, and sometimes it's easy to have the philosophy of I want to be able to support students like that, but then the technology people come in like me and say, and how do you make that happen? And with Dynamics 365 is how we make that happen, because it gives us the platform capabilities and the opportunities and the customizability and the kind of technology forward thinking that allows us to continue building to support students as they change and bringing all the campus together on a single platform increasingly, where we get both the data of the students and all of the ways that students engage with us, putting that together and having a holistic record of each student.
Now, I got to tell you, it's been a few years since I've been in school and since I've been a student at school, but I'm just trying to understand, like, what does it look like from a student's perspective? Let's say they want to interact with the system and understand, what their grades were or request a transcript or what have you. What does that look like from their perspective? How do they engage with the system that you've built?
So we are still building a lot of these capabilities. We don't have the capabilities of them to be asking for the transcripts, but what we do have in this case is the ability of a student to talk to any office on campus and get the same kind of support. So one of the benefits we've had with Contact Center is when a student talks to any of our offices through any of the engagement points that we're slowly deploying, voice, texting, web chat, that context of their conversation and that context of their intent comes with them no matter who they speak to. Sometimes we talk about AI and we always think of, especially since generative AI came about, it's something you have to ask to get information. But what's been beneficial for us is a student goes to a web chat and talks to a chatbot and says, I want to get the transcript. Can someone help me? That information, when that student decides that they need to escalate to a person, and the person, one of our staff in the registrar, is there to look at that conversation and pick up where the chatbot left, there's automatically a tiny little summary for AI that says, this is what Bryan, the student, needed, and this is where he is. And I can tell you from some of our student assistants who work on the contact center, but also experienced on both sides, they said It's very important for students to know that when they go to talk to someone, they don't have to say, yes, this is the question that I asked. This is the sixth time that I asked it, because it's 6 different people, 3 different technologies, 4 different chatbots. So we're trying to kind of centralize that and allow a student to ask the question once and have the question go with them and the context as they go along through our systems.
Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than having to repeat your information over and over and over between a chatbot and different representatives. And so the fact that it can be seamless, from the chatbot into the human agent representative it seems like it could really be an unlock. So that's great to hear. Now you used the magic word AI here, and I'd love to hear, as you think about your rollout, what were some of the key decisions that you made that ended up making this successful?
So at CSUSM, we've been very lucky to have deployed and worked on a chatbot since 2019. So even before generative AI times, I was lucky enough to build that and run it. So I would send all the messages to students, see all their conversations. I learned so much about how students think about the university and how they speak about the university. We can have a whole conversation on discourse and language and how students understand and translate universities in their own language. But one of the challenges we had there was it was a knowledge-based chatbot, which means it was a lot of manual effort to make sure all of the questions are there and all of the questions can be answered, which we did find that it was incredibly effective for students. Students were very grateful to be able to ask any question 24/7, get the support they needed. Many of them would tell us things like, I don't like talking to asking for help because sometimes I feel like I'm going to be judged. I don't have to do that with AI. But as we started seeing, generative AI came out and our Dynamics ecosystem was building out, one of the reasons we built Dynamics in the way that we're deploying it is to have all that information that matters, so we can have those AI tools informed on those on that data on top of that.
So you must talk to a lot of your peers at other schools, and I'm curious what advice you give them about, how to do the same thing.
I always tell people, and I used to say this when I used to teach, don't let the technology lead your pedagogy. You should come with the pedagogy and figure out what technology fits. Yeah. I think it's a very similar approach. We went in with a philosophy, which is, how do I support students from beginning to end throughout the life cycle, but look at the ways that they engage with the university, not just the ways that we can engage with them. And that's where the contact center conversation very quickly came out, because of all the different ways that they engage. So go in with the philosophy, decide what student success looks for the university, what does your population need, what do your students need, literally stand in the shoes of one of your students and look at the services we offer, and then start building from that, find the right tools that fit that philosophy. Because by the time you build this is going to be a many, many year project. You want to know that you're going in the right direction and supporting students. And the technologies, you can figure out which ones work and which ones doesn't. But if you start with the technology, very soon you end up finding some boundaries that say, well, I wish I was able to do this, but I can't.
Yeah, starting with the right business intent makes a ton of sense. It's a great place to start. Now, I don't know if you've seen the movie Jerry Maguire, but there's a famous quote in it that's show me the money. Mm-hmm. And with that in mind, I'd love to hear, where do you think you're going to see measurable impact, from this deployment? And, what metrics are you watching most closely as you scale this up?
It's always fascinating to talk about metrics, because part of the challenge of universities is because we have such disparate systems and such disparate services, it's really hard to even get a whole sense of how long do we spend supporting students. Well, it depends which office you ask, which tool you look at, which data point you look at. So part of what we're doing right now is even setting that baseline. The ability, recently when we deployed Contact Center for our registrar, financial aid, help desk, student financial services, advising, our main line, it is the first time where we can actually see how many students call in holistically to talk to all of those areas. How long do they spend talking? And now we're starting to see, well, oh, wow, we actually have a baseline. How do we improve that baseline? And some of the improvements we've seen, even based on what our student assistants have been saying, who work on both sides of the contact center, was conversations can be shorter because, as I said before, the context comes with the students, so they don't have to always ask, what is the problem? What help do you need? So that is starting to be shorter and shorter. We have a long way to go to be, where we want to be with a fully deployed system, but just having the baseline, the understanding of the university as a whole has allowed us to start thinking, how do we make things better for students now?
Yeah, start with the baseline and then hill climb from there, like continuously iterate to improve. But you got to start with that baseline. Makes sense. Now, I bet as you envision this project, and again, just as you said, you started with the business intent, like the intent that you were trying to achieve, and then decided technology. I'm curious, what led you to Microsoft? Like, why is Microsoft the right partner for you here? And maybe what else are you excited to do as this continues to grow and evolve?
We've been working very closely with Microsoft since 2019, when we started talking about how can we do some interesting projects with Microsoft Teams to support students at the same time. We started building things like virtual office hours through Microsoft Teams. And we built a really good collaboration with Microsoft where we would have conversations of how can we help them make the tools better for education. And the fact that they were listening and taking our considerations and our feedback was a good sign of this can be a partnership that can take us where we want to go. So we were already deep into the Microsoft ecosystem. So thinking of, in this case, Dynamics 365 as just an addition to the platforms we already have, and given our platform approach to how we build technologies, again, it kind of makes sense both financially and technologically. But I also like the fact that Microsoft is doing a lot of the work for us when it comes to upgrading all of these AI tools and all of these tools that a university cannot catch up with how fast this technology is changing. So at least I know that Copilot, for instance, we're getting the latest models, we're getting the technologies we need to support students the way we want, and I can focus on building the infrastructure, building the ways to support students, and know that the technology is moving along with how fast the technology is changing, and I don't have to worry about that. And also the fact that the focus on responsible AI is quite important. We're very, very careful how we deploy these technologies. We deploy them for students. We need to make sure they are as safe as they can be, as responsible and ethical as they can be. And we know that those are some of the principles that also guide Microsoft in the way they deploy these tools. Sometimes that means some of the functionality comes a bit later than other tools, but I'm fine with that. I'd rather have it late and safe than not. So all of that together led us to start with the Microsoft project, work with these Microsoft tools and work very closely with Microsoft. Now, where we're going to go, I wish I had a crystal ball to know where the technology is going, because I don't know, whatever we say now is probably different in a month. But we continue to deploy the different channels, deploy the different ways of supporting students, seeing what students respond to the best, what ends up helping students the most. We're looking into voice AI as possibilities to see if that can help students who want to quickly get an answer and don't want to be texting asynchronously. So it's all the possibilities, all the ways that those can coalesce around a single platform that we can use to support students. So ask me in a month, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be in a different place than what I just said.
Like all of us right now, I'll tell you what, things are moving fast. But I appreciate the partnership and thank you for betting on Microsoft. Tasos, I'd love to close with the last question, and this is one I like to ask everybody that I interview, which is, I'd love to hear about your AI magic moment. So that moment when you used AI, maybe in your personal life, maybe at work, and you were blown away by what it could do, and it just completely opened up your mind to new possibilities. So with that in mind, what was your AI magic moment?
I think I have two AI moments because I've worked with the two AI technologies before generative AI and after generative AI, and both had the different kinds of magic. The first one, when we started using our chatbot, seeing how students were interacting and how students were getting the answers they needed, and how we started understanding what the students' intents are when they ask these questions and how they ask questions, even just the language that they ask questions, helped us very quickly realize that looking at the university from a student's perspective is a very valuable experience when it comes to building the right technologies. Now, when generative AI came about, one of the challenges we had with the previous chatbot and any of the old chatbots is they're not conversational because there was no context. So it was a question, answer, and we would always see the students frustrated that they couldn't just continue the conversation When generative AI came out and I started seeing that it can carry context through the conversation, which means it's no longer a question and answer, it's a conversation, that immediately started me going down the route of, well, that means that context can carry with the student as they seek support, because generative AI understands context. It understands context. That means that unstructured data becomes very important. So that just little thing, the fact that they could answer and remember and go back and forth over a few different questions, I was like, that's going to be gold.
Thank you so much, Tasos. It's been really nice to talk to you today. I've really enjoyed our conversation, hearing more about what you've done and how you've used Dynamics and Copilot Studio to really transform your student engagement platform. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and thank you for the conversation.